Hello and good evening. Welcome to Cabinet, Tuesday 25th of February in the Town Hall. Membership of the Cabinet, I think we're all here, no apologies. Minutes of the previous meetings, are they a correct record? Any interest? If you've got an interest, I know some councillors here as well, please fill the form in and hand it back to the clerk, Andrea. Oh, sorry, I didn't say you, Cathy, sorry.
I do have an interest. Item 13, the organisation I work for delivered some of these play schemes.
Okay, thanks a lot. Any more? So that on the side. We've got no deputation in the petition, is that right? Yeah. We've got no public members, so there's no public question time. Member question time, I'm assuming that you're going to speak on the... Yeah. But before we go into the formal part of the meeting, I just want to say a few words. This is the third consecutive week that we've actually suffered unprecedented floods. And it's still raining. I was just coming back from Leeds, and one of the car parks I park in at, usually when it rains, it's pretty easy to get in and out of. And I was worried that my car was going to get stuck just where the little dip was. And many people who I've spoken to, and many local authorities up and down the country, that we are the fourth emergency service. But I think there's a fifth emergency service, which is our voluntary community sector. Because the voluntary community sector and the community that have pulled together is remarkable. And our staff who have actually worked really, really hard, not just in the local authority, Kirklees, but in Calderdale. You know, the damage that was caused in 2015 was horrendous. And I was talking to Jane Scullion, who's the deputy leader of Calderdale Council, and she has once again been personally affected. And it was really reassuring when she actually went on the social media, assuring residents that we will try our best, because we have a weather that is completely unprecedented. In the summers we have droughts, and we still haven't found a way to actually make sure that we store that water. And in winter, autumn, we face the kind of weather we are facing. And we didn't wait for any national trigger. We actually just made sure that our emergency plan was put into effect. So I think we really need to pay tribute to our staff for the hard work they're doing. And I know there's a report on the cabinet papers, but I just thought I'd make sure that people were aware, because the way the stops were pulled out, it was tremendous. And it's something that's been unprecedented. We've seen river levels at record level, not just here in Kirklees, but in Leeds, in Bradford, in North Yorkshire, in Calderdale, and up and down the country. And it's remarkable that the way community resilience pulls together, it brings communities together, and that's so powerful, right? Yeah, and that's something that all councils and all councillors need to be proud of. So I just thought I'd mention that because the work they've been doing is tremendous. Member question time. Martin Bolt.
Thank you, Chair. And can I join you in paying tribute to the many people involved in dealing with emergency circumstances, including in Murfield. We have a group of people called the Murfield Rescue Volunteers who give up their time using specialist 4x4 vehicles and help people to move around under places such as Station Road, where you can't get from one side of Murfield to the other because of the flood water. In the light of what you've just said, and the circumstances that we're still seeing, will the Cabinet be revising the flood risk management strategy? And in the light of the impact on homes and businesses, what will you be considering in terms of mitigation and prevention?
I think now's not the time to play politics, and I'm sure my friend Councillor Martin Bob will agree. We have a report on Cabinet. It's an emergency report. It's been put together very, very quickly. And probably because the sequence of events have happened so fast, it's probably more or less outdated. But there are some emergency measures that are taking place at the moment. So when we go into that report, he will see that we are actually taking immediate action. We're working with all our local authority partners up and down the country. We're working with DEFRA. we're working with the Environment Agency. There's communications that's been had at the moment while we speak with the Secretary of State who's responsible for this area, also the Shadow Secretary of State, and they're actually cooperating really, really well. And I think in the spirit of that, we need to actually start doing something, because what we've seen is a phenomenon that's going to take place on a regular basis. Peter, did you want to come in?
Just a quick one, Chair. I think we're all aware of the impact of flooding. We're also aware that the government has made comment about developments on floodplains, which should be, very careful before so doing. We have abided by all government guidelines in terms of allocating land, and we will. However, we have pointed out to the government, and will do so in the negotiation of a deal on West York, to say if there are particular problems, as some of which we're experiencing, perhaps more so in Calderdale, we want some significant resource to enable us to mitigate some of the problems that there are with flooding, or to address some of the immediate causes, which would be particularly so in Calderdale. So that is part of the great ask, that the government not only changes the criteria by which we should allocate land and so on, but to enable us to be able to deliver on the government's own criteria. And so where there is land which is allocated in floodplains, that you need the resource to mitigate any problems that might relate to it.
Yes, Martin.
Thank you. I wasn't playing politics. What I was asking was, as I said, for the revision of the flood risk strategy. Now, bearing in mind that this time last year, Cabinet took a paper on the annual review of the progress against the action plan. The purpose of the report was to consider the annual progress against the action plan of the Kirklees Local Flood Risk Management, which was approved by Cabinet January 2013, updated November 2016, and then February 2019. What I was asking was, will you be doing that review again? Now, we've heard a lot about other things. Now, if this was being reviewed as it has been on those times for production, it went in April 2019, then work would have already started to go through the process of preparing a report for public consultation. But what I'm taking then from your comments is that you haven't started that review process. So when you do, will you take into the account the impact of the floods that we've had now, and look at putting in place mitigation measures and prevention? Because Mirfield, geographically, is at the confluence of the rivers Home, Colne and Calder. And then, we can try and mitigate it within Mirfield, but what we need is prevention elsewhere, either slow the flow, which is Rob's familiar with, partially up the Colne Valley and the Calder Valley. We need to see natural flood measures and some engineering. But it's not politics, it's asking what's happening for a report that you've had before.
Yeah, point taken, Martin, and we will do that. Thank you. Any more questions? Martin?
Yes, thank you. Peter's partly alluded to this. I was interested to read today that Labour's Shadow Environment Secretary, Luke Pollard, has called for a ban, immediate ban, on the building of homes on floodplains. With severe weather happening more often, we now see a new plan for flooding, and that can start together with an immediate ban on floodplains. Is that something that this Cabinet will bring in?
Martin, I said that right at the beginning, that the Secretary of State at the moment, who's part of the government, and our own Shadow Secretary who's responsible for this area of work, are actually looking at this. And one of the things, and I've got a conference call later on with the Secretary of State and Treasury, and one of the things that we are going to put forward as a proposal to the government to make sure the Environment Agency and DEFRA actually do basically understand the issue that we face at a local level, that part of the devolution deal has got to include something that's robust, that's realistic, that can mitigate the rules and regulations that have been put in terms of developing our local plan. Because, DEFRA, they set the rules. If they set different kind of rules, then we are more than happy to abide by that. We can review all strategies, all plans, all procedures, but if the guidelines do not allow us, that are statutory guidelines from national level, then our hands are tied. I'm optimistic that on the back of the talks that are taking place, that we will be able to actually get a lot more, other than the gain share, in terms of any devolution deal. And I will relay your comments, Martin, directly to them. And I'm optimistic that they will take our views into account, because they want a devolution deal and so do we. And part of that devolution deal needs to be looking at how climate is affecting us, how the week in, week out floods that are devastating our communities. It's still raining, like I said earlier on, and we need action now. But action can only take place if there's national commitment in terms of making sure that we actually get the resources. Martin, you want to come back again on a different question, or is it supplementary?
Supplementary, please, Chair. What I said was take immediate action. This council can take immediate action because there is a planning application which is not yet signed off, therefore the decision has not been approved. 67 houses on Granny Lane at Murfield. This council...
Can I just, because there's a number of members who are on the planning committee, and I'm just conscious, right? Yeah, I need to take guidance here.
Chair,
yeah.
as long as they don't take... I've done the planning training. Yeah. Members can...
For my clarity, I'm not asking for your clarity. Yeah. I just want to make sure, right? Yeah. My understanding is that has gone through, that planning application you're talking about has gone through strategic planning committee. There's some conditions that are there that are still outstanding. So based on that, I'm being very, very careful, right? I completely hear what you're saying, Martin. But we are basically in a situation where, we've followed the right process, the right protocols. The planning committee has made a decision. There's one or two things that they're just looking upon. But that case has already come to my attention, and I have asked planning officers to look at that very, very carefully, and that has been taken into account, Martin.
Thank you. So for clarity, have you instructed that planning application is not signed off as it should be? A planning application is not made until
Martin, with all due respect, I cannot answer that because we are not the strategic planning committee. Yeah, there is a very clear remit. Yeah, I can take your concerns back. I'm more than happy to do that, but I cannot give you an answer on a planning committee where the strategic planning committee, which operates on a cross-party basis, is a quasi-judiciary committee.
No, it's not.
Well, I beg to differ, and I will take your concerns back on there, but I do not want to make a comment on their behalf because that would be completely wrong and that would be unconstitutional.
It's not a matter for the planning committee. Sorry.
To make this point to Martin, there is a distinction between the executive arm, which makes policy, and the implementation of such policy. Thus, I cannot be a member of a planning committee because I can't be party to the two processes. So it would be absolutely wrong for me, or the leader for that matter, to interfere in the judicial procedure of the planning committee. So any such concerns, Martin, logically should be referred to the relevant planning committee.
Again, there is a misunderstanding.
Martin, I'm more than happy to take your question.
I'd like to finish my questions.
Please listen. I'm not trying to stop you. Yeah. But I'm just asking you to respect the process and the protocols and the constitution. I'm more than happy to take a question, but I cannot allow you to ask questions on this particular planning application. You can make comments, right? Yeah, and I will not be able to sort of tell you that one way or another what we can do, what we can't do. I can take your concerns back as long as that's clear.
Yep. Okay. Well, again, there is a difference because having the local residents and community groups have been advised by a planning lawyer that it is something which the council can make. And if colleagues wish to look at the situation on Granny Lane, where the planning site is underwater, could I ask Councillor Pattison if she still thinks it's worth the risk?
Martin, I don't want Councillor Pattison to make any comments. That is completely out of order. That is completely out of order. I made it very, very clear, right, that you have actually brought attention to somebody, who sits on that planning committee, right, and you said that you won't play politics, right, To be honest with you, that's actually worse than politics, Martin. I would have expected something more mature from you. Seriously, I'm really disappointed in what you just did. Have you got another question?
On a different matter then, we've discussed previously the climate emergency motion, and part of that is bringing along dwellings which are of high environmental standards, reducing fuel cost to people. Is that something that you as the leader in your cabinet are committed to?
Martin, as you know, the Climate Emergency Working Group was set up with the spirit of on an all-party basis, and your group, you chose not to participate in that, and I think that's where we need to start from.
Because land is being sold off by Kirklees to developers for social housing, and one of the questions that we asked as ward members in Murfield, and this matter coming up today, is about any covenant or caveat on those homes will be developed to passive house or other standards. Officers have responded that there are no requirements in the heads of terms for the development to be constructed to minimum environmental standards. There is currently no general policy for such requirements in the sale of any council land and property, and in this particular case, there has been no instruction from Cabinet to include any. So, irrespective of what you said, there is nothing that's happening in the sale of council land and property to try and bring about high quality developments.
Whatever you've read from mine, give me that and I'll have a look at it. Okay.
Other than the most up-to-date regulation and standard laid down by the British government, which of course is a Conservative government, which I suspect you support. Is that true? Do you support the Conservative government's guidelines?
Government sets minimum standards. As we know, the council can set exemplar standards. But what we're hearing from officers is there aren't even any minimum standards.
Give me what you've just read from Martin. Okay, thanks. Any more questions from any of the members?
Oh yeah, I've got
Councillor Cooper? Councillor Cooper.
Thanks for asking a question about building standards, Martin. Question. I've listened carefully to what you've said regarding flooding, and that you're hopeful that government is going to provide us with more guidance and such like. What we need, I think, and I'd just like to ask you whether we have, is to question government as to whether they will enable us to revise our local plan because of the flooding issues that have come up. Have you actually asked that? Have you asked government, or yourself, or through the local government association that represent us, to review the national planning policy framework in light of the flooding issues that are affecting us? So I'd just like to know if any action has been taken regarding getting in touch with government about those issues which are affecting Kirklees residents now.
That's a very good question, Andrew, and it's a very, very serious question. And I don't want to just answer that in terms of what we're doing, which I will do. I've had a number of conversations across West Yorkshire, and just today we were talking about how do we actually, start to address not just the target, the set of 2038, but also how do we start to actually make sure that very, very quickly we start to put safeguards in, how do we start to change our policy direction, how do we start to campaign, and a whole range of things that we talked about. And one of the things that is coming out very, very clearly from across the country is there's a massive shortage of housing. We all know that. Just a few days ago, there was, another declaration that, we actually falling behind on our targets. People are sort of dying to actually move into affordable housing. The affordability envelope is actually completely unaffordable. So even the affordable housing that we have are not affordable. Based on that, if you actually start to do something, then you need to actually make sure that the figures that have been agreed on the local plan at district level, then you need to make sure that, if you actually start to review that. So say, for example, if you start to address issues that we all been talking about recently, that you can't build houses here, you can build them there, then there could mean that we have to encourage on the green belt and the green field. So it's not a straightforward argument about, stop building there, and you take that bit of the plan out and then put it into another area, because that will also have an impact on the environment, that will also have an impact on climate, that will also have a massive detrimental impact. The other thing we've got to understand is 40% of the emissions in this country is actually made by cars. So there's a number of things that we can do, and I'm sure you'll probably know better than I do, Andrew, that we actually need to do a lot more than we are doing, not just in Kirklees but across the piece. I'm sorry to actually go around and talk about the wider picture, but we will do everything we can if we actually are given the powers. We will do everything we can as long as we are given the flexibility, and if there are any factors that the government actually wishes to bring to us, we will be more than happy to actually look at them factors. If they ask us to look at our local plan, we are happy to do that, because the local plan is something that we have to do on a statutory basis. If we didn't do that, we'd be penalised. And if the government comes back and says, actually, you know, we need to actually look at your figures here, there, and everywhere, we will say we can do that, but we need to then look at how we can actually put them numbers back in to the equation to make sure that the numbers that have been set by government, they're met. And if that means that government actually says to us, you can build on green belt, then we will need the support from government to actually argue the case with our local communities, and basically work on a cross-party basis to make sure that does take place. Peter, do you want to add anything?
Let's try and get the problem in some sort of perspective. West Yorkshire Combined Authority has been asking the government to look at issues relating to climate change and all the implications that might have for problems it may create with regard to existing planning. Bear in mind, we've just got a very new local plan. There are a couple who are just on the point of being approved. There's an oldest one, which is Wakefield. So we're all seeking guidance about how, if we need to adjust local plan in the light of climate. And now this is long before the floods of the last 3 weeks. But of course that, heightens the issue. But I think it's worth bearing this in mind. Most of our great towns are built on floodplains, like London, for example. The biggest parts of East Anglia are below sea level. Most of Holland is below sea level. So the issue is not you should never build on floodplain. It's when you do, you take the necessary measures to enable it to be possible. It's very significant. All the flooding we've had all over Europe and so on, that Holland has hardly been affected because they're very good at treating the problem. This is the way we want to deal with it and deliver with the government, to say we want to enable us to be able to deliver a scheme that is viable and operable, whatever the climate change might bring about. So what we need here is a mature dialogue, not a knee-jerk reaction, either by a Secretary of State with a statement this morning, or by his counterpart in the opposition to say we need some immediate action because of 3 successive weekends, which are themselves, of course, frightening. But we do need to reflect on this and come back with a series of policies which will be effective. So I think we're all concerned. The thing is to go about it in a logical, systematic way, working with government to achieve what I think we all want to see.
That's the longest no I've ever heard, really. I asked a very simple questions like, have we been in touch with national government about revisions to the National Planning Policy Framework or adjusting our local plan? And no, but we're going to, would have been an answer. Yes, we'll work through the LGA. Yeah, there's all sorts of ways you could have answered that, but it just was no.
Sorry, Andrew, my apologies if you misunderstand me. Yeah. It's not a straightforward issue of yes and no. Yes, we are continuously raising the case, not just myself. But remember the last time? Today, just now. And I've got I don't know if you were here, but I've also got a conference call with the Treasury and the CLG, and we're going to raise it again. And we will keep on raising it. It's not something that, we just stop. All the leaders immediately after Storm Sierra a couple of weeks ago contacted the government. There was a ministerial visit at the same time in Calderdale. We raised it there. And I think your question was a very good question, seriously. And I wasn't saying that it's a very, very serious question. Yeah. But to actually, yes, we are. But yes, we are. But also, you've got to understand that there's a very small percentage of the population who actually understands and actually really feels and actually, resonates, right, with the climate agenda. Most of the people I speak to do not talk about this, yeah? And this is why it's so important that we need to create an awareness that people actually then will be actually more easily, persuaded to change habits. Because the biggest thing to break is habits. That is the biggest thing to break. I'm not just talking about smoking habits, I'm talking about any habit. And the habit for our local population to actually change from one mode of transport to another, it is massive. So, and that's why your question is so important, that we need to actually do so much more work. But even if we had the funding there, and by actually putting all these things in place, will the communities accept that? Because communities, right, want change, but sometimes doing change at a very fast pace is actually regressive. And this is why the whole campaign that we need to do to actually, change hearts and minds and change people's perceptions, change people's behaviours, change people's mode of transport, make them understand that the climate is theirs, they have to safeguard the future, and that's why I think your question was so big, it's a very, and I didn't just say that, I actually meant that. Sandro.
You've got an item on the agenda about providing a flood grant. I've just had, which that's good. Glad to see it. What I didn't see on there was anything about protection for houses, such as floodgates that people can put up against the sides of the doors, or measures which can raise the electrics in people's houses to make sure that they're protected from floodwaters, or barriers in walls which can give flood protection through polyurethane foam. So I didn't see any of that there, and I just wondered whether it was or was not covered in the grant.
That work is already ongoing. It's been ongoing since 2015. Let me give you an example. This time round, despite the publicity and the national coverage, we've actually had 65 residential properties that have been affected. In my view, one property being affected is one too many, but that just gives you the impact of what's happened. 40 businesses in Kirklees that have been impacted. Now, the reason why these figures are not as big as one would assume is because since 2015, and probably before that, we know where properties are most likely to flood, like in Murfield, and Martin mentioned. There was an issue in Hepcombe a few years ago as well, but I think that's been addressed, and there's been localised flooding in other places. So what our officers do, as per council policy, is to write to every single household that is going to be at a risk of becoming flooded or due to adverse weather conditions, and it lets them know what sort of measures they need to take into the mitigating that. And one of the things is putting gates down. Another thing might be to actually run a couple of bricks. One of the cases that Carol told me about was a local business just actually putting a couple of courses of bricks, and that would stop that cellar getting flooded. So a lot of properties have actually taken this course of action. The question, if you ask me, is that enough? No, it's not. And this is what I'm saying, it's about a matter of hearts and minds. How do we convince people to actually safeguard their own properties by taking small measures? Because, the responsibility as a homeowner lies on me. I wish the government could do more, but I don't believe in a nanny state, right? Yeah, so I've got to take some responsibility, and we will continue to actually make sure that the properties that we've identified on here, how many were part of that risk assessment in terms of what they could have done. We will help them. The report's there, and I think we're going to talk about the report now, right? It'll just be a matter of approving it later on, but there's still a lot more to do, and it's about changing the hearts and minds, and how do we convince people that this is the thing what you need to do.
I'm not particularly, changing hearts and minds is great. I'm just trying to find ways of helping householders in Armitage Bridge whose homes have been subject to flooding. They were threatened with flooding this time round, came very close to it. We were down there just watching it and trying to clear drains which hadn't been cleaned. I'm really just asking the question so I can find out how I can actually protect these properties and whether this grant that you talked about will actually enable us to put floodgates up on the doors of those properties, which will protect them from flooding. That's the reason I asked you the question.
There's already a policy in place, and if there's any properties that you've identified that are not part of that risk assessment, let us know. I will get officers to actually write to them, contact them, and see what we can do. Because the criteria is very, very
They've been flooded twice, and council officers are aware of the properties.
Let me have a list of them, and then, you know, because I can't talk about individual cases.
No, I'm not asking you to.
There's properties in my ward that have been affected as well, but I know that they won't qualify for this certain thing. But let me have the notes. Rob, do you want to? Oh, sorry. Okay. Shall we move on?
Can I?
Yes, Councillor Munro.
In relation to the in relation to agenda item 14 rather. Obviously, you know that in January I raised the issue of the robustness of the assessment tools used in assessing flood risk areas in the local plan.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you up, but we're not even on item 14. I think we're on item.
Oh, well,
it's
just a question. Sorry, okay. Sorry, I got that
so
wrong.
Do you want to answer that question now, or do you want to? It's up to you.
I'll ask it now because everybody else has been asking questions. As you know, in January, prior to the flooding of recent weeks, I raised the issue of the robustness of the tools that are used, the assessment tools that are used in assessing flood risk areas that were used in the local plan. So following on from that, I would like to know if you could tell me if both the individual and combined impact of housing developments on flood risk to existing homes, say further downstream, would have been taken into account at the time. I really would like to know if the impact of additional houses being built in an area, again, what their impact on the flood risk to houses, existing houses downstream, if there is a stream in that particular valley, and what that means for those houses further down. Would they have been taken into account in that flood risk assessment?
Yes. Sorry.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay,
thank
you.
But that, let me just elaborate. And the reason why I want to talk about this, because I'm really passionate about this, because I'm getting to, it's actually a real issue, right? And it's not going to go away. It's going to keep on coming back again and again and again.
Well,
and until we actually communicate that outside this council chamber to as many residents as we can, there's certain things we can do. Like Councillor McBride mentioned, the fens and Holland, and how they can actually mitigate these issues. In terms of the local plan, every single scheme that we put forward as part of the local plan had full DEFRA consultation, environment agency. There was a lot of checks and balances that was made. And if DEFRA come back, or the environment agency come back, and they can do if they feel that we need to actually improve things, then we will do that. But we need to work with government to actually make sure that we address the issues that are facing us. But in terms of your answer, your question, right? Yes, everything has been taken into consideration.
Right. Thank you. So so I've just got one further question, if that's all right. At the time, a local resident contacted me because he lives in Fenny Bridge and his house is one of those that's at risk from flooding. So I asked if officers would be prepared to hold a meeting with residents in Fenny Bridge to discuss what can be done to mitigate against the potential risk of flooding in the future. Now, the officers did come back to me and say that they would be prepared. They were going to check all the gullies and clean them out. But residents have actually asked for a meeting with officers to see what can be done and see if we can find some way of actually allaying people's fears, basically. So I wondered if that would be possible, if we could actually have a meeting with the officers, please.
Yeah, well, let me know the details of the case later on, because I don't know like I said, I don't know the individual cases, but if you can let me know, I'll have a chat with you afterwards.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Item 8, Collections Development Policy Review. Which council, who's going to move that? Councillor Rob Walker.
Right, I would like to seek approval for the Collections Development Policy Review. The Collections Development Policy has to be reviewed every 5 years to meet national standards which are set by the Arts Council. The policy references the vision which was set out in the 2016 document Culture Kirklees. This document was based on extensive consultation with stakeholders, and over 1,000 individual people contributed to the consultation. There are a number of changes which are intended to embed this policy in the wider cultural strategy. There will be a further public and wider stakeholder engagement taking place this year, which is part of the National Lottery Heritage Funding Project, Bringing Out the Best, which will help to refine the vision for our museums. After that, I guess it will come back with a further restatement of this collections policy.
Councillor seconding that, are we okay to approve that? Councillor John Taylor. John?
Thank you. I just want to welcome this report, and I am broadly supportive of it. I think I would like to ask that when we do the further consultation, we give a bit more thought to how we do that consultation, because there is a danger that we will end up with the same old people responding, and actually we're not really getting out to the broader communities, and we should be looking at a fully diverse range of people who are responding. And when I talk about diverse, I also mean in terms of, the things I've mentioned in this chamber before, like people who are carers and what aspects or issues they may have, people who have a variety of disabilities, so, people who are visually impaired, not just people who are in a wheelchair, do they have the opportunity to learn from the wealth of information and knowledge that's contained within our collections that would be beneficial to various communities. So I think we need to think a bit more outside the box about how we do that consultation engagement, really be my plea. Thank you.
Right, thanks for that, Councillor Taylor. I think they're all very sensible suggestions. If you want to share those with me further, or send me an email with those points, I will certainly pass those on. I think they're all valid points. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, item number 9, determination of school admissions arrangements for 2021-22. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Our Kirklees Council is responsible for all the admission arrangements to all the community and voluntary controlled schools in the area, and they are then responsible for doing a consultation exercise every year. That took place this year, academic year, I should say, between the 5th of December and the 15th of January. And there were no comments or there was no response to that consultation. And as a result, there is very little change to the actual admission arrangements that are in place for the year starting 2021-22. The only changes that there are that the number of schools, there have been some schools that have become academies during the year, so they've been taken out of the arrangements. There's been the changes that have had to be made to the priority admission areas for the Almonbury Community School. And also, as a result of that, Lower Houses and parts of Moll Green Community Primary School and Dalton School, they've had their priority admission areas changed. And the only other thing that the change that has been is that the governing body of Haid Edge School asked for their admission numbers to be increased from 12 to 14, and Lower Houses Primary School has asked for their admission number to go up from 29 to 30. All of those changes are in accordance with what we would want to see. So therefore I do recommend that we approve the admission arrangements that are set out in this report in the appendices 1 and 2 for the coming year.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Are we okay to approve that? Thank you very much, members. Item 10, small affordable housing sites. Consideration of an objection received to the Section 123 notice on the proposed disposal of land at Kitson Hill, Crescent, Murfield. Is that
Move it, Chair.
Councillor Peter McBride move it and Cathy Scott as... yes, Cathy?
Yeah, okay. Obviously, this is for the general public so that you are aware why the rationale behind why this is actually come. There's been an objection received and it's to be considered by Cabinet and it should be in your papers under Appendix B and hopefully people have circulated and been able to read that. I want us to support the recommendation on the grounds that it relates to planning issues that are set out in Section 6. So I do move this and second the recommendation of Councillor McBride.
Okay. Councillor Bolt, do you want to say anything?
Yes, thank you. I mean, first of all, we need to draw Cabinet's attention to the fact that, there's one objection here, but the council didn't have the courtesy to tell the resident in good time that this was coming. I was told by officers on Thursday that they would be writing to the resident. Therefore, the letter would have probably arrived at a person's house on Saturday, if you're lucky, giving somebody very little time to make employment, care or other arrangements, and even less time for them to try and find the report. I'm pleased that the officers listened and it was delivered by hand. I disagree with the premise and the first bullet point of the recommendation, and you've already alluded to what isn't planning issues, Leader. As anybody who sits on a planning committee knows, the effect of the value of someone's property is not a planning consideration. The effect of disruption during construction is not a planning consideration. And the potential loss of a person's right of access is not a planning consideration. So the key issues, the primary issues, which the first bullet point says are planning, is wrong. These are matters which are affecting a resident's quality of life. This is the leadership who said they were going to work with people and not do things to them. So working with people, shouldn't you have made sure that they knew what was happening when you were doing it to them, and that the layout of this design, the number of properties accessing this from Kitson Hill Crescent here, 6 bungalows, plus all of those around, means that this should not be a driveway, this should be a road up to adoptable standards, which Murfield Town Council raised and so far have not received a response to. So I would ask that the first bullet point is struck out and that Cabinet members accept that you can make a decision, but the premise that you're making it because it's a planning is false. And the residents' points are well made, and I think that person needs to have a personal response on what's going to happen during construction to make sure that, as the person says, that they can get in and out of their home, they can go to work, not just them, but the other houses around, and subsequently that these people, this is a former garage site which people have had access over for a number of years, they may have established rights of access, and we should be making sure that they maintain those when the council's selling off the land.
I think Cathy wants to say a few. After well, Peter then Cathy, yeah, go on, Peter.
The local authorities met its responsibility under Section 123 of the 1972 Local Government. The issue that you refer to is a matter of an objection in planning terms, a totally different procedure. Well, it is, I'm afraid. That's the law.
Yeah. The other point is, Martin, you did mention about the resident not being informed. Well, Cabinet is advertised on the internet. Papers are out there. I know not everybody it's accessible to. It's not practice that we actually write to that person and tell them it's going to Cabinet. However, I have to commend our officers. With your conversation as well, they personally delivered them papers, which is unheard of. So, that recognition that they did take on board what you're saying, Martin.
Yeah. Councillor Graham Turner, I'll bring you in, mate.
Yeah, Chair, this came to Heavy Woolen a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. We went on a site visit, we had a good look round it, and we went back to Dewsbury Town Hall and had the Northern Planning Committee and discussed the residents' concerns and the objections that have been raised, and we found no reason to not continue to develop this site. It's 6 bungalows in an area that's populated by bungalows in an area where we're desperately short of bungalows. This is a perfectly acceptable development, and if we'd handed a little less, that's fine. I'm not 100% sure, but I think from memory nobody turned up at planning committee at that stage to object to it when they would have all seen planning notice, seen the planning bus. So we behaved absolutely to the letter of the law and planning law at that committee meeting, and this is an absolutely fantastic development as far as I'm concerned.
Martin.
Thank you. Cabinet members seem to be conflating two issues which should be kept separately. No, Councillor McBride is wrong, and if he isn't, then every time somebody turns up at a planning committee and says, I want to object to that development because it may impact on the value of my house, I want to object to that development because it may cause disruption during construction, I want to object because of civil issues, if officers turn round and say those are not material planning considerations, then we will cite the words of wisdom of Councillor McBride that he says they are planning issues. Just like Graham, the issues that you considered would have disregarded those. You would have looked at the relevant planning issues. And you're right, we do need houses, but what we need to do to develop bungalows is to develop them in conjunction with residents who've lived around there for many years, in conjunction with residents who've established rights of driveways round the back. That's all they're asking for. They're asking for consideration. They're asking for the council to work with them and not do things to them.
Right, Martin, I think we've had a robust debate on that. You've had your say. We hear what you're saying, but we've moved the recommendation. We've seconded it. Are we all okay to move the recommendation? Thank you very much. Next item is annual RIPA update. Councillor Graham Turner.
Chair, it's a requirement that we bring this report every year to council. We granted 0 RIPA authorisations in the last 12 months. We've carried out the relevant training during the current year that we were obliged to do, and I ask Cabinet to accept this report.
I agree with the recommendation. We all okay to approve it? Thank you, members. Item 12, early education, childcare, SEND inclusion funding policy. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this report is here to approve the SEND inclusion funding policy. The policy sets out the parameters around access to that fund and SEND Plus, and provides clarity to early years providers and parents and carers. So I move the recommendation that the Special Needs and Education Disability Inclusion Fund policy be approved as a reflection of the Council's commitment to supporting children to have the best start in life and supporting parents and carers of children with SEND by reducing barriers to access employment.
I second that, Chair.
Are we all okay to move that and agree? Okay, thank you very much, members. Item 13, Kirklees Youth Alliance Holiday Programme. Councillor Viv Kendrick.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report which attached to it is the evaluation report prepared for us. This was a project that was started last year at very short notice, and if people have taken time to read the report, they will see there's some incredibly amazing outcomes with a spread across Kirklees. We valued that project, and in last week or the week before, budget meeting, we actually put into the base budget £225,000 to continue this as a continuous provision. Our thanks have to go to Kirklees Youth Alliance, who organised the project for us, and this is in consideration that we would like to continue with that commitment to Kirklees Youth Alliance to take a longer term approach to recruit and train groups more and to provide this holiday provision across Kirklees as much as possible. I'd ask that colleagues note the recommendations on page 119 and accept the 61, 62, 63.
I second that recommendation.
Councillor Muscan, you've got your button on.
This is an excellent example of really good working with a number of different partners, and it's a good example of the council working with people and not to people in the way it was implemented. It was very much a partnership based project, and there was a very broad range of community groups and the voluntary sector involved in this. And we're just building on the success of last year, and in the future we will be developing the model further over time, you know, in line with the evidence and intelligence that we have on the ground.
Okay, are we all okay to... Councillor Martin Bolt, I hope you're going to say it's a fantastic report and it's really, really visual and you know, you're fully supportive of this.
In addition to which, Chair, could I ask, when commissioning activities for future years, the Appendix 3 gives some useful information, and when commissioning work, presumably paying for it, we'll look at stuff like the attendance per cluster on Cluster 6, Dalton and Almondbury, where there was a lot of app bookings for the Keep It Real Youth Club, but no attendance registered. The Deaton Table Tennis Club had a small number of bookings, no attendees. Will that be considered in the future to make sure that if we are commissioning these, that we are getting value for money and that we do further enhance this wonderful project?
I think the information that's put together by KYA is as good as was sent to them, and there are some returns that haven't been provided appropriately and in time, which is what's missing. There were people doing those activities, it's just they've not come back and we can't guess the numbers, but we are still pursuing that, and that is a requirement for organisations and community groups in the future, that they must provide the information in order to be funded for it.
Okay, so are we all okay to approve this report? Thank you, members. Item 14, I think we talked about this a lot at the beginning, but I think there's a few things that we just need to reinforce because of the severity of what's happened and what is happening, continues to happen. Storm Sierra hit us on the Sunday the 9th of February, the weekend after we had Storm Dennis, and the weather continues to actually affect all parts of the UK and our region. In 2015, we had floods that we thought that were unprecedented, but what happened a couple of weeks ago was actually, completely, off the scale. Record levels of rain, record levels of flooding, and Martin's already mentioned Murfield, but it was Millsbridge as well, Marsden, Birkby, Ravensthorpe, and all these communities suffered as a result. West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, the police, the ambulance service, and the council staff, and the voluntary sector all pulled in, and the focus was to actually help the most vulnerable, people who can't help themselves, and I think that is something that everybody will agree with. I've also mentioned 65 residential properties, 40 businesses that have been affected, and in helping them get back to normal, whatever normal means, is we're going to be providing grants of £750 to meet clean-up costs and council tax discounts for at least 3 months. And businesses will be able to get grants of up to £3,000 for clean-up, also business rate relief for 3 months. One thing we've got to understand, that the council did not wait for the government to actually say that you need to declare an emergency, and you need to implement your national flood relief scheme. We actually, did it because, that was the right thing to do, and the emergency protocol was put in, and the emergency planning officers set up in Civic Centre, and we took 10 times more calls in one day than we would otherwise. On the back of that, we continue to work with DEFRA and the Environment Agency, and we will administer the DEFRA scheme, which is allowing people to get 5,000 worth of grants to their homes and businesses for flood resilience programs. That will continue to do that. So, you know, there's still a lot more to do, and one of the things that we're doing is making sure that we continue to actually lobby government to make sure that, you know, we continue to develop the schemes that we're already developing. For example, the flood defence scheme for Ravensthorpe and Murfield is already underway. But if it's not completed and you have partially a scheme that's not completed, it will breach. So the scheme is only good when it's actually completely finished. If it's 90%, 95% completed, that 5% will actually allow the breach water to get through. So, you know, there's some things that we need to think about. So on the back of that, I'd like to recommend to Cabinet the recommendations that are in this, and we need to actually get on with getting help to our communities. I've got a number of members. I saw Viv's hand go up, and then I saw Rob's, and then Kathy, so I'll take Viv first.
Thank you, Chair. I really welcome the fact that there's some financial assistance, that the fact that council tax can be put to one side for people, bulky waste that's been damaged taken away, and that this seeks approval for after our approval that the grant scheme will be launched. What I'm most concerned about is that each and every person who's been affected knows clearly about it, and it's okay saying we put it on the website and so on. If we know who the people are who have already indicated, I'd love it to think that we were going to directly post something to them. Certainly ward councillors should be made really clear to them so they can help their residents, because not everybody will be robust enough. It must be a traumatic time for them. I'd just like to make sure that everybody gets the chance to apply for what's available for them.
With reference to paragraph 3.4, we are working very closely, I think, to try and lobby DEFRA and the Environment Agency about accelerating the delivery of flood defence schemes. One thing that is a problem for that work upstream is that one of the key criteria is looking at the number of properties that are affected within 10 kilometres of where the work takes place. And the problem with that is where most of the natural flood management work needs to take place, in the upper Home and Combe valleys, you haven't got a huge number of houses that are directly affected, but it does have a direct effect on properties down in Murfield and Dewsbury. So something that we need to take into account, and I hope our Conservative colleagues will pass those thoughts back to DEFRA ministers, that they should really be considered when they're looking at future funding.
I think quite a lot of it's already been said. I'm actually really glad, and I think it's welcome news that we have got a flood recovery. And it's about getting the message out there. It's good to see that we're providing some support for those that desperately need it, but it's getting that, how we're going to get that message out there. I know it says paragraph 2.8, and Martin did allude to this earlier, it's people don't often see these reports, so it's about knocking on the door, using the vehicles, and people working in place are the vehicle to use this within your communities, you know. And it's about, we're going to have to watch these rising water levels. It isn't going to go away. We have got an emergency, and it's the climate change, and it all fits into the environment. I think there's been a good contribution here today discussing things, particularly with the gates and different avenues that we can look at. And it's like no idea is a wrong idea, and I think it should be appreciated, and perhaps, you know, cross-party working together to tackle this. We need to do something.
I just wanted to reiterate what the leader said at the beginning is the excellent collaborative work that happened across the wide range of agencies that came together during this period and continue to come together and work. And I would like to also thank all the officers for putting together our recovery plan. And I think it's a watching brief basically. There are no borders, we're all responsible, and we've got to be forever vigilant.
Get us confused anyway. Three things really. One, welcome the report, and I think it's great that this is getting out and getting out quickly enough. For once, I'm going to disagree with Viv. I'm not sure we should post things to them, because it's quite likely that they're not actually in the properties.
Although sadly some people are.
And I agree. The other point I wanted to make is the areas that flood regularly, we understand. And Rob's right about what he's talking about the upper valleys. We have other instances where we get flooding because of developments at that point in time, and specifically in the early stage of developments where they've taken off all the topsoil, and then when we get one of these horrendous weather events, one of these storms, there's nowhere, the land isn't able to take the water, so we are having flooding, which once those properties are built and developed, we probably won't get the flooding again. So it's a request to go back to our planning teams, because actually the temporary drainage that's put in place on developments as we're developing them probably needs to be given a lot more consideration than perhaps we've done in the past. Probably the long-term solutions when the houses are all built, one would hope, are okay. But certainly what I'm seeing in some places in my ward, and I'm sure it's the same across the borough, is where you've got that, the topsoil's been taken off, the water just runs straight off down into the adjoining property. So there's something we ought to be looking at there, really, if we could take that away, if that's okay. Thank you.
That's fine. Councillor Graham Turner.
Chair, thank you. I mean, I welcome this report, and it's a shame that we haven't got a bit more money to give them some even more money, but anything is better than nothing, as they say, at this what must be a terrible time. I can't imagine how terrible it is to be flooded. I think there's been quite an interesting debate on this, and I think the problem is we need almost a proper regional look at this, and it's too bitty for me at the moment. We've got people up planting trees, which is fine, we need to do that, but then what that does, it slows the flow there, and then when it gets to somewhere else, because it will come down eventually, you create flooding somewhere else. So we need yes, I know, but what I'm saying is sometimes you put flood mitigation in to some areas, as we know what happened in Fish Lake. Sheffield didn't flood, Fish Lake flooded. Yeah. It's about that slowing the flow, and it's about a whole regional view on this, because it's not my water, it's not anybody's water, it's just water, it goes where it wants. And I think that's part of, should devolution come, that must be a major part of devolution, that we have a regional strategy about flooding. There's no point preventing Murfield being flooded, if you flood somewhere else down the road. What we've got to do is start right at the top and have a proper plan that covers the whole length of the rivers network, and we haven't got that. It's too bitty for me.
Councillor Martin Ball.
It may be a bit dangerous, but I agree, Graham, that there does need to be that consolidated look. I mean, the Environment Agency have a regional Flood and Coastal Defence Committee, but how much attention they pay to Kirklees when they've got places like Fish Lake, York and everywhere else. Again, I refer that we can revisit the local flood risk management strategy, which is a council document, and look at that throughout the length of it. It's a shame. It's a shame Andrew's gone, because one of the issues that Councillor Cooper raised was about the protection of properties, and I'm sure you should have received by now the information from MHCLG about the money that they're giving, which strangely enough is about the same as what's in this report. In addition, DEFRA have announced activation of the Property Flooding Resilience Grant. Flood-hit homes and businesses can receive up to £5,000 to help them make changes which will reduce damage levels. So that's, again, what Councillor Cooper was talking about for homes and businesses. The point has been well made that communications, and the council's got more communications staff now than we have previously. Let's be using that and looking, because the figure of 40 businesses that you quoted is going to be on the low side, because Homebank Mills in Murfield is home to 33 small businesses, and the partner business itself, businesses on Lowlands Road, Murfield flooded. the businesses at Butt End Mills, where we have a nursing home that got planning permission and said in it would evacuate people should the need arise over a railway bridge that they didn't own and which Network Rail have condemned. Many businesses in Murfield on the Huddersfield Road flooded. So the 40 business, I think, is still on the low side. Maybe that's because those businesses are still, as John said, probably not in there, that they're cleaning up. If we don't take action, what we will see is businesses leaving this area. They will be leaving the areas where they flooded in 2015 and subsequently because they can't get insurance and they can't afford to do that themselves. So the other thing which I'd like us to consider, probably should the need arise, very quickly residents were given bulky waste collections, lifted restrictions and access to our tips, but businesses had the same things. If a business is having to clear out stock, material, furnishings and that, and they have to be charged to go to the tip to get rid of stuff which has been damaged, that's a double whammy. We should have lifted that so that businesses which were getting rid of flood material should be able to do it. And just one thing that Rob might want to consider as an amendment on 3.4, when we talk about flood defence schemes in the Calder and Home valleys, surprised, Rob, that you didn't say that we should also be including the Colne Valley in that, because happy to help, Rob. Cheers.
Okay. Anybody else wants to talk? Yeah. No, I think we've had some really good contributions, really good input, and this is not unfinished. This is not unfinished business. This is an immediate plot of money that's been provided to actually address immediate problems. But there are long-term issues that we need to talk about. I think one of the things that Viv mentioned is we need to actually make sure that we communicate more effectively, because, you know, if people don't know they can access this money, then we've missed a trick. But thank you very much, members. Are we all okay to approve this? Thank you. Item 15, Huddersfield Blueprint, next steps, Councillor McBride? Or is it? Who is it? Councillor McBride, yeah.
Report is to bring people up to speed. People remember the launch of this back in June. It's to update you in terms of things that have happened subsequently, slight adjustments in the light of later experience. For example, with the climate change resolution, and of course the plan will have to adjust to that. It also provides a context in the sense that we want a supplementary planning document to state where this stands in planning terms, read the local plan, and that is useful in terms, not only for planning terms, but also in bidding terms, bidding for monies, for example, with the town's Future Towns Fund, bidding with the West Yorkshire, and in fact only tomorrow we are meeting with the chair of the LEP to talk about further bidding for West Yorkshire money with regard to both Huddersfield and Dewsbury. So it's significant in all those terms. There will be a regular update of things which are happening in terms of the implementation of the blueprint, but things are well underway in terms of things that are happening this year. For example, the three significant road schemes which will be operating this year, one of which is New Street, Cross Church Street, and the link between the two stations, the bus station and the railway station. I think also the Leeds Road Gateway will start this year, if not be completed this year. So quite a lot of that was referred to in the blueprint is already beginning to happen. Thank you. I can recommend this report.
Anybody want to, Nahid?
I'm really pleased to see the next steps demonstrate that we mean business. It takes on board the earlier discussion around climate change, about supplementary documentation in relation to planning, and making sure that the progress takes place and we keep we keep the residents and businesses on board because we want Kirklees district to be open to business, and in particular here we're talking about Huddersfield. I'm really, really very pleased that we managed to do so much, and we're doing so much in the next steps, which is like it was only revealed 6 months ago. So thank you.
John Taylor, not John.
Thank you. We've got different names. Number of points, if I may. My first point, whilst there's a lot of good in this, what I was hoping I was going to see in this report, when I knew this report was coming to Cabinet, was some linkage between this blueprint and the Dewsbury blueprint that has now been launched. And also in the budget proposals the administration brought forward, they put aside money for towns and villages investment. I don't understand how they all link together, and they've all been developed independently. And as a consequence, you may have impacts on business cases, because actually, if you start improving one, so for example, if we start to make a success of Huddersfield, that could have an adverse impact on Home Firth. Or similarly, if you start to make a good impact on Dewsbury, could adversely impact on Batley. So what I was looking for was some acknowledgement that there is a Kirklees-wide strategy that shows these things have been thought through, and we've looked at the implications across all of them, so that we understand, so that when we are making bids for money, we don't find that some of these bids start to falter because we haven't fully understood the linkages and the risks associated with one development moving forward and perhaps another one coming back. So that was my first point. My second point is a consistent whinge from me, or when I get grumpy. On page 164, it talks about transport, and it talks about, I've got the wrong page, and it talks about regional and local connections, and it talks about the links to Leeds, and it talks about the links to Manchester. Once again, no reference whatsoever to the Penistone line, no reference whatsoever to the strategic link to Sheffield and the south. We are not, I don't know how many times I have to say this in this chamber, when are we going to get our act together so we look strategically at Huddersfield, how you access Huddersfield, how you link between Huddersfield and the other conurbations around us? We seem to be, once again, looking in one direction only and forgetting that Huddersfield does extend as far as Kirkburton and Denby Dale. There's no recognition of that at all in here. So that is hugely disappointing. And whilst I'm on that theme, I've also had a quick look at buses. And one of my constant whinges again about buses is that whilst we talk and we say how busy our bus station is and how wonderful it is, the number of people that come through our bus station, again, if you want to make Huddersfield successful, it has to be accessible by all the people who live in Huddersfield. And if you look at South Kirklees, it is not easy to get into Huddersfield by bus. And I did a quick look while I've been sat here on my phone. If you want to get a bus from Marsden to Huddersfield during the day, it'll take you 30 minutes. If you want to get a bus from Shepley to Huddersfield, which is a comparable distance, it will take you 53 minutes or 1 hour and 2 minutes. And that's the point I'm trying to make, that you need to make it as easy for all of our residents to access the town centre if you want all of our residents to use the town centre. And currently, there is a great discrepancy between the time it takes through public transport to get into the town centre from the south of the south of Huddersfield than it is from other parts of Huddersfield. I got involved in the place-standard discussions around the blueprint and had conversations with people. And there's a lot of people that do use our buses, and the ones who have access to good buses are very supportive of it. But when you get out into my patch and further, what you will get is people saying they don't come into Huddersfield because it's difficult to park, and our loss of one of our big car parks is going to make that more difficult. But it's difficult to park, the route in from the south isn't good anyway, and the buses are so infrequent and they take so long. So again, if we're looking strategically at how do we make Huddersfield successful, we need to think about how you get into Huddersfield from all parts of Huddersfield and not just those areas that have good bus routes. My next point is on page 175. I'm on point 3.5, really. 3.5. Page 175, again, it makes reference to the cultural heart and the high-quality public stroke park space. And again, this was something that was commented on loads of times in the place standard stuff that I did, that people were critical of the vision in terms of the public park. We have a great tradition in this country for very good municipal parks. Greenhead Park is a perfect example of that. I'm going to get a bit parochial now and talk about where I come from. So Birkenhead Park, over in Birkenhead. Birkenhead Park was the first municipal park in the UK. Birkenhead Park was the model for Central Park in New York. They're examples, and Greenhead Park, these are examples of really good parks. What we're proposing to do in the town centre has been described to me as a big open space that will just be wind blown. So I don't think we're being ambitious enough. I think it should be a park, but we need to put a bit more thinking into what that looks like and how do we make it more attractive rather than a just big, what looks like a big green open space. It doesn't look attractive at all at the moment. And my final point is when it talks in the Cabinet report, it says electoral wards affected Newsham, Greenhead and Dalton. I would argue that all of the Huddersfield wards are affected by it and therefore all should have been really consulted on it. Thank you.
I take those points in
Yeah,
turn.
Peter. Yeah.
I agree with you. All wards in Huddersfield are affected, and in one sense, all of South Kirklees is direct, and some parts of North Kirklees are affected. So I would be as all-embracing as we possibly can. With regard to your other comments, with regard to parks, well, of course, they've been massively affected by an austerity programme that was introduced 10 years ago, which resulted in 60% cuts. So despite that, the most affected authorities, like Liverpool and Kirklees, have nonetheless been able to retain their parks. So, trying to push a boulder up the hill. With regard to buses, well, I share your ambition. I would want to massively expand bus service. If we're serious about climate change, you've got to encourage people to get back on the bus. But of course, we're still affected by a man in 1986 called Nicholas Ridley, who brought in the privatisation of the bus services and the deregulation of the bus service. Only one of 3 in the world. I think it's Chile and Formosa are the other countries that have got deregulated systems. Even the United States got a regulated system. So we have seen subsequently a 70% reduction in people using buses, consequent upon that regulation or that deregulation in 1986. Nonetheless, we've tried to keep together a bus service subsidised. I would argue we should double or triple the amount of money we invested that. Again, we come back to the asks of the government. We'll be asking the government, in the interests of climate change, to give us the resource to be able to run a decent bus service. And to do that, you need very, very significant resources. With regard to the links to South Yorkshire, yes, the paper should have referred to links to the Penistone line. I've constantly criticised various documents, whether it be West Yorkshire or Kirklees, that do not refer to our links to South Yorkshire, as well as our links to Manchester, as well as Leeds. As far as the interactive relationships between towns are concerned, clearly we want to benefit and help all of our towns, but we can't do an economic analysis of impact on all the other towns before we invest anything in any given town. It's only this year that we've begun to put serious money back into our major towns and then subsequently to our other towns. There may be some time down the road where we'll have the ability to reflect on the interactive relationships between those different investments, which all will be proportional to the size of townships and communities and villages throughout Kirklees.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Can I reply to the point about the central space in the cultural quarter? To some extent I agree, and I see where you're coming from. If you look at the illustrations, it does look a bit of a big open space, a bit sparse. But there has been a lot of discussion about what will happen in that space. I think it would be wrong if it was just left as an open space with nothing really planned for it. So we're looking at it in terms of how can we attract people into that area for play purposes, for children and families. How can we use it as an outdoor arts venue? So that could be for things like music and drama. It could also be things like visual arts outside. The idea of an outdoor sound space linking to the indoor sound space, I think, is really exciting. It could also have a visual arts content as well in terms of things like sound sculptures. So there's a lot of thinking about this taking place, discussion with some of the partners who are involved in the consultations about things like the Year of Music. But I do agree more of that needs to take place, and we also need to work on communicating that to people. That communication has got to be two ways. We have got to listen to people's ideas.
John, you got a question? Comment?
I just want to come back. I'm disappointed with Peter's response because I tried not to make any political points at all. Regardless of how much money is available for buses, we should make sure that we are equitable in how we treat communities. And if it takes more than twice as long to get into the town centre from one community than it does from another of equal distance, we've got something somehow wrong. So we need to take that on board. And I also take issue, Peter, this report says you were consulted on it and you're named on it. For you to say, I keep saying that we should look at Sheffield and we should consider the Penistone line, you read and signed off this report and it's not in there. You can't really blame the officers. I keep making this point, and for me, there's something wrong in this council, that there is a blindness to the Penistone line, to Sheffield and the links to the south.
Sorry, I was just going to say this is just next steps. It's not the full report. And also, when we're referring to buses, it's a commercial business. And basically, they go on commercial routes. If we had an in-house, if we had a nationalised, subsidised transport system, then we could talk about it.
You make valid points, but we've got an economic strategy. That economic strategy now will need to sort of link into all this. One of the things we've done last couple of years, we've actually put in a lot more money. We've had 10 years of austerity, and we've got the corporate plan. We've got so many things happening. And you've got to also understand that, we don't operate in silos, because the government actually announced bidding rounds without any reference to what's happening in any other areas, no reference to deprivation and the impact of it, yeah? So, and this is really sort of, it is political, because what it is, right, is if it wasn't politics, then we won't be here. I remember, and I'm old enough to remember, is there were estate action, there was single regeneration budget, there was city challenge, and this is across all governments. I'm not just, it's across all governments. New deal for communities, all sorts of stuff happening. And then you look at the legacy, and the legacy isn't sustainable. So what we're trying to do is actually sort of look at what we've got in terms of the tools we have, look at what strategies we've got. The strategy will be continuously evolving, developing. We've also got the corporate plan. And rather than linking up what we're trying to do, we're trying to deliver. So this is a delivery plan. This isn't a plan, right? Yeah, that actually starts linking everything up. I'm sure it's there. I will get officers to brief you on that. But the key thing is this is a delivery plan, and I think we need to start getting stuff done. So are we all okay to agree and get on with that? Okay, members, thank you very much. Item 16, Corporate Finance Report, Quarter 3. Is it all linked up and
thanks, Chair.
all strategies, everything there?
Yeah. I was going to talk about trains and buses, but I didn't get a chance. It's all right.
Graham, it's all right. My apologies.
Peter's taken on board that the Penistone line must be in any future ones, and John's absolutely right. And we won't agree many times, but we are right. That is an important link. And if we're going to have a northern powerhouse, that link is vitally important, and it will build on the money that's being invested at the moment by Northern Rail on new platforms. Anyway, the more exciting thing as far as I'm concerned, this is the Q3 corporate financial monitoring report, and as members will notice that we're predicted to be about 0.5 million overspend at the end of the year. That's just equates to 0.2% of the revised budget. I am confident, as I speak regularly with the Section 151 officer, that we will actually come in on budget. So, Chair, I ask Cabinet to accept this report.
I second that. Are we all okay to approve that? Thank you. Item 17. Now, what I plan to do is 17 and 18. They've also got a private report. So I'm assuming that you've read the private report and you're okay with it. So item 17, Peter. You.
A few weeks ago that we launched the master plan for Dewsbury, and at that meeting we were able to announce that we were going to buy the arcade. I think it's like a jewel in the crown. It's a critical investment, which also sends a message to Dewsbury that we're very serious about investment there. So we're showing with our money and our example that we're open for business and we want business to be invested in Dewsbury.
Yeah, so you're all okay to approve that? I second it. John, you.
So I'm fully supportive of this. I just couldn't work out from the paper. Did we end up having to go? Are we having to go down the line of compulsory purchase, or have we now agreed to buy it? I know I can't ask for how much. I'm not bothered about the amount, but it just.
Okay, item 18, Riverside Development Strategy. Again, you've read the private report, yeah, so based on that, we're approving that.
Further part of the land that the riverside, which enables us to develop the site far more effectively, because ultimately this is one of our key sites in the whole of Kirklees. So this should enable delivery to take place more quickly and more effectively.
Are we okay to John?
Yeah, I just have some questions around the highways aspects of this. So we talk about the links to Lees Hall Road Junction and Forge Lane Junction. And I don't know what feasibility studies have been done. I've not seen anything in the public domain. I have concerns as a councillor for a neighbouring ward about the potential impact on my communities. So I'd like to have some sight of how we've done, what we've done in terms of that modelling and feasibility, because I would have expected to have been consulted on this, because this can have a potential impact on my ward. So I can see that there is a level of congestion trying to get through, either if you want to go through Ravensthorpe out towards who would ever want to go to Murfield now, Martin's not here, towards Murfield, or if you're going the other way towards Dewsbury and Leeds. And I can see people trying to come up through Thornhill and out through into my ward. So I would like to see those things. I would like in future, where we are looking at this riverside development, that we bear in mind it will have an impact on Kirkburton, and that we are consulted as consultees rather than just the Dewsbury wards. Thank you.
Chair, this is a step in the process. It's acquiring the land and putting together a site which will be developed. When it's developed, when it gets approved, we will have to have all the details of all the infrastructure. And the impact will be way beyond Kirkburton. It will be Kirkburton, the whole of North Kirklees, and certainly in my ward in Dalton. So fully aware that it's got major, there are major consequences for the whole of Kirklees in terms of traffic movements and so on, not least the A644. So we're very, very conscious of that. At the moment, officers are working on schemes. When those schemes are developed, we'll bring them forward. But as I say, they're not required to until such time as there's a serious proposition to bring this forward. And at the moment, we're not yet at that stage.
Yeah, you make a valid point. And one of the things that I will be doing later on today and next few days is to push the ministers, because part of the devolution deal needs to actually look at all the bigger infrastructure things, like Peter mentioned, A644. That has an impact in Collardale and beyond. So the schemes can only become viable and sustainable and when the details are put right, and the infrastructure is so important. And it's spot on, John, and we will be continuing to have them conversations. Are we okay to... Yes, yes. Right, are we all okay to approve this? Thank you, members, and I think we've got to the end of that. And thank you for your time. Thank you.